Scientists just found a black hole so big it breaks the rules of physics, not bends them a little, breaks them completely. This thing weighs as much as 40 billion suns. Some say 66 billion. And it should not be possible for something this heavy to exist this early in the universe. It is like finding a fully grown adult standing inside a hospital nursery, except the math says that adult should not even be born yet. Scientists have spent years trying to explain how this thing got so massive so fast, and every single explanation they come up with sounds more like science fiction than real science. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this black hole terrifies astronomers, and why they just found out it might not be the only one. The monster nobody believed. Let's start simple. What even is a black hole? A lot of people think a black hole is like a giant vacuum cleaner in space, sucking up everything nearby. That is not true. A black hole is just a place where a huge amount of stuff got packed into a very small space. If you swapped our sun for a black hole with the exact same weight right now, Earth would not get pulled in. We would just keep orbiting like normal. We would freeze without sunlight, sure, but we would not go flying into it. Gravity does not get stronger just because something becomes a black hole. It only gets scary once you get close. And getting close is the problem. As you creep nearer to a black hole, its pull gets stronger and stronger until it reaches a point where nothing can escape. Not rockets, not radio waves, not even light itself, which is the fastest thing in the whole universe. That invisible edge, the point where escape becomes impossible, is called the event horizon. Think of it like a one-way door. Walk through it and there is no walking back out. Not because a wall stops you. Because every path forward now leads only deeper in. Most black holes are not that huge. Some form when a giant star runs out of fuel and collapses in on itself. Those end up being just a few times heavier than our sun. Space is full of these smaller ones, quietly drifting around, doing nothing dramatic. But then there's another kind, the really big ones. These sit at the center of galaxies, including our own. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, has one hiding right in the middle of it. It weighs about 4 million times as much as the sun. That already sounds massive, right? Scientists actually took a picture of a black hole like this once, at the center of a galaxy called M87. It looked like a glowing ring of fire wrapped around total darkness. 4 million times the mass of the sun is already hard to imagine. So get ready, because the black hole we are talking about today does not weigh 4 million suns. It weighs tens of billions of suns. That is not just bigger. That is a completely different level of big, like comparing a single grain of sand to an entire beach. This black hole has a name that sounds more like a serial number than a monster. It is called TON 618. And once you learn where that name came from, and just how big this thing really is, you are going to want to know everything else about it too, which is exactly what we are covering in the rest of this video. If breaking down insane space facts like this is something you enjoy, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because this channel exists to take the wildest ideas in the universe and explain them in a way that actually makes sense, no confusing science talk required. Now, let's get into how this thing was even discovered in the first place, the star that was secretly a monster. Back in 1957, a group of astronomers in Mexico were doing something that sounds pretty boring on paper. They were scanning the night sky and writing down every faint blue dot of light they could find. It was slow, careful work. They were not hunting for monsters. They were just cataloging the sky, one point of light at a time. And one of those faint blue dots ended up being the 618th thing on their list. So they gave it a simple label, based on the observatory's name and its spot on the list. That label became TON 618. Nobody thought twice about it. It looked like just another small, dim star. Boring, ordinary, filed away and forgotten. For 15 years, that is exactly what everyone believed it was. Then, in the early 1970s, telescopes got better, much better. And when astronomers took a fresh look at this supposedly boring little star, they realized they had made a huge mistake. It was not a star at all, it was something called a quasar. Here is the simple version of what that means. A quasar is the blazing hot center of a distant galaxy, where a giant black hole is actively feeding on gas, dust, and anything else that gets too close. As all that material spirals inward, it heats up so much that it glows brighter than every single star in its galaxy combined. So what looked like one small, dim star was actually the light from an entire feeding black hole way off in the distance. But here's where it gets really strange. When scientists figured out how far away this thing actually was, the number was almost too big to believe. Light does not arrive instantly. It travels at a fixed speed. And even though that speed is incredibly fast, space is so massive that light still takes time to cross it. When you look up at the night sky, you are not seeing stars as they are right now. You are seeing light that left them a long time ago. Some of that light left before you were even born. Now stretch that idea out as far as it can possibly go. The light we see from TON 618 left its source more than 10 billion years ago. 10 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That means when this light began its journey across space, Earth did not exist yet. Our sun did not exist yet. Our entire galaxy had not even finished forming. The universe itself was still young, still less than half its current age. So every single night, when telescopes catch a glimpse of TON 618, they are not seeing it as it is today. They are seeing an ancient photograph, a beam of light that has been quietly traveling through the dark for over 10 billion years, just to reach us. That alone would be a wild enough story. A tiny dot that turned out to be an ancient, glowing monster from the edge of the observable universe. But the story does not stop there. Once scientists figured out exactly how massive this thing actually is, that is when TON 618 stopped being just an interesting discovery and started becoming something closer to unbelievable. Numbers too big to picture. Let's talk about size, because this is where things start feeling less like science and more like science fiction. Our sun is already enormous by human standards. You could fit about 1 million Earths inside it. If you tried to imagine the sun sitting where our moon is, it would swallow up almost the entire sky. That is how big our sun feels to us. Now here's the twist. Compared to the biggest stars in our galaxy, our sun is actually kind of small. So before we even get to TON 618, throw out your idea of the sun being some ultimate giant. It is not even close. TON 618 is estimated to weigh somewhere between 40 billion and 66 billion times the mass of the sun. Scientists are still debating the exact number because measuring something this far away is incredibly tricky. But here's the important part. It does not matter which number turns out to be correct. Either way, this black hole crushes every other record we know of. In fact, it is so heavy that scientists had to invent a brand new category just to describe it. They call it ultramassive, because regular supermassive was not a big enough word anymore. Let's put this in a comparison that actually makes sense. Our entire galaxy, the Milky Way, contains several hundred billion stars. Every star you have ever seen in the night sky, every star that has ever existed in our galaxy, all of them combined, all of that mass, and TON 618 could still outweigh every single one of those stars put together. One object. Heavier than an entire galaxy's worth of stars stacked on top of each other. Now, let's talk about its size, not just its weight. Remember that one-way door we talked about earlier, the event horizon? Around a normal black hole, that door might stretch across a few miles. Around TON 618, it stretches across roughly 1,300 times the distance between Earth and the Sun. To put that in perspective, Pluto, the farthest major object in our solar system, orbits the Sun at only about 40 times that same distance. That means the edge of TON 618's event horizon reaches over 30 times farther than Pluto's entire orbit, in every single direction. If you tried to fly across it in a spaceship moving at the speed of light, the fastest speed anything can travel, it would take you about 2 weeks just to cross from one side to the other. 2 weeks at the speed of light to cross one single black hole. And it is not just massive, it is also blindingly bright. Scientists estimate that TON 618 shines with the brightness of around 140 trillion suns. If you lined up the entire Milky Way galaxy, every single one of its hundreds of billions of stars glowing at once, TON 618 would still outshine the whole thing by a factor of thousands. One single object, brighter than an entire galaxy, multiplied over and over again. Surrounding this monster is a massive cloud of glowing gas, stretched out across more than 300,000 light years. That is more than twice as wide as our entire Milky Way galaxy, just in gas swirling around this one black hole. Take a second and really try to hold all of that in your head at once. A black hole so massive it outweighs every star in our galaxy. So wide that its edge alone would take 2 weeks to cross at the speed of light. So bright it outshines thousands of galaxies, sitting out there in the darkness, more than 10 billion light years away. That alone sounds impossible. But here is where things really do not add up. Because based on everything we know about how black holes are supposed to grow, TON 618 simply should not exist. Not this soon, not this big. And figuring out how it managed to break the rules is where this story turns from amazing into genuinely mind-bending. A problem the universe should not have. Here is the puzzle that has been driving scientists crazy for years. Black holes are not born massive, they grow over time, and they only grow in two ways. Either they slowly pull in gas, dust, and nearby matter, or they crash into other black holes and merge together, combining their mass. Both of these processes take an incredibly long time. Even under perfect conditions, feeding as fast as physics allows without literally blowing itself apart from its own light and heat, a black hole can only double its size every few tens of millions of years. That might sound fast on a human timescale. It is not fast on a universe timescale. Remember, the light we are seeing from TON 618 left when the universe was less than 4 billion years old. So if this black hole started out as a normal collapsed star, then grew steadily and normally over time, there simply was not enough time available for it to reach 40 billion, let alone 66 billion, times the mass of the Sun. The math does not work, not even close. So scientists have come up with a few different explanations. None of them are fully proven. All of them sound like something out of a movie. The first idea says that in the very early universe, before stars had filled space with heavier elements, giant clouds of raw gas might have skipped the whole process of forming stars completely. Instead, they could have collapsed directly into a black hole, but not a small one. A seed black hole already about 100,000 times the mass of the Sun. Starting that big would give it a massive head start, enough to reach Ton 618 size numbers in the time available. The second idea is basically speed dating for black holes, except way more violent. In the crowded, chaotic centers of the very first galaxies, stars were smashing into each other constantly. Some of those collisions created smaller black holes, and those black holes then found each other and merged again and again and again, growing heavier with every collision. Repeat that process enough times, fast enough, and you could end up with something like Ton 618. The third idea is the strangest one of all, and it is the one that keeps gaining more support. Some scientists think certain black holes were never really built at all. Instead, they think these black holes formed almost instantly in the first tiny fraction of a second after the universe began, before a single star had ever lit up. In this version of events, Ton 618 was not a star that eventually became a black hole. It was born as a black hole right at the very start of everything, and it has simply been feeding and growing ever since. Nobody knows for sure which explanation is correct. Maybe it is one of these. Maybe it is some combination of all three. But every single explanation forces scientists to admit the same uncomfortable truth. The early universe was somehow building massive objects far faster than our current understanding of physics says should be possible. For a while, this was seen as a strange, isolated case, one weird outlier way off in the distance that scientists could quietly set aside as an exception to the rule. And that is exactly what made the next discovery so shocking. It was never alone. For a long time, Ton 618 got treated like a fluke, a 1 in a billion freak accident. An impossible object that somehow slipped through the cracks of physics just once in one corner of the early universe. Scientists could study it, get confused by it, and then move on, treating it as a strange exception rather than a real pattern. Then, a brand new space telescope changed everything. This telescope was built specifically to look deeper into the past than any instrument before it, peering into the first few 100 million years after the universe began. And almost immediately after it started scanning that ancient stretch of space, it began finding things that were not supposed to be there. Scattered across the young universe, scientists started spotting tiny, extremely red points of light, in far greater numbers than anyone had predicted. Astronomers nicknamed them little red dots. At first, nobody was totally sure what they were looking at. But as more and more data came pouring in, one explanation kept rising to the top. Many of these little red dots appear to be black holes. Not tiny ones either. Many of them already seem to weigh millions or even billions of times the mass of the Sun, sitting inside galaxies so young that those galaxies had barely even finished forming. Some scientists have started describing these objects as something close to black holes disguised as stars, feeding so violently and so quickly that they blow past every growth limit we thought existed. And here is the part that changes everything. The explanation scientists are using to describe these new objects are the exact same three ideas we just talked about. Giant gas clouds collapsing directly into black holes, runaway collisions and mergers, black holes born instantly at the dawn of time itself. This brand new telescope did not solve the mystery of Ton 618. It did something far more unsettling. It revealed that Ton 618 was never some rare, one-time glitch in the universe. It was just the first one we happened to notice. The early universe, it turns out, is packed with objects like this. And the deeper telescopes look, the more of these monsters keep showing up, which means the record Ton 618 currently holds for the biggest confirmed black hole probably will not last much longer. So naturally, there is one question left hanging over all of this. Is Ton 618 coming for us? The answer is no, and it is actually a pretty clean no. Ton 618 is not moving toward Earth. If anything, the opposite is happening. The universe itself is constantly expanding, which means the distance between us and Ton 618 is growing larger every single year. It is drifting farther away, not closer. Even if you somehow sent a signal toward it traveling at the speed of light, it would take more than 10 billion years just to arrive. We are never going to visit it. We are never going to see it as it actually looks right now, only as it looked billions of years ago, frozen in the light that is still making its way across space toward us. But here's the thing. Just because Ton 618 cannot physically hurt us does not mean it cannot mess with your head a little. This black hole is a reminder that the universe still has secrets we have barely scratched the surface of. The rules of physics that work perfectly fine here in our quiet little solar system start bending and breaking the moment you look far enough into the past or far enough across space. Somewhere out there, right now, in a version of TON 618, we will never actually witness. It is still sitting in the dark, still growing, still completely rewriting what we thought we understood about how big things in this universe are allowed to get. And every single night, a tiny sliver of that ancient 10 billion-year-old light finally finishes its journey and lands quietly on a telescope mirror somewhere on Earth. Almost like the universe is still trying to tell us just how much we do not know yet. If this video blew your mind even a little bit, do not forget to smash that like button and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next deep dive into the wildest, most mind-bending corners of space. And before you go, I want to know what you think. If a black hole this massive can just quietly exist without us noticing for decades, what else do you think might be hiding out there in the universe, waiting to be discovered? Drop your best guess in the comments. If you enjoyed this one, check out our other video on black holes for more mind-bending space content just like this.